Scarlett Blade. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Silent Night, Memoirs of a Royal Guard, Chapter 30. Captain Shining Armor had insisted I use the lieutenant's office until we actually had a lieutenant. It was unnecessarily large for me, but I did what I was told. He stuck his head through the door and said, "Great work yesterday. I heard the Griffin soldiers were being rude and that no pony even batted an eye." "That is correct, sir. It takes more than some feather-brained griffins to get under our coats of my ponies," I replied. "That's the spirit. Speaking of ponies, I've found a good candidate for a lieutenant. He is still in officer's academy, but I think he's ready. Plus, he'll be a great sergeant until you educate him on how the Royal Guard life actually is." I tilted my head. We didn't have a unit sergeant. Our unit had not been big enough for command to feel that was necessary. "Who is that, sir?" I asked. Shining Armor set a first sergeant pin on the desk and said, "You, obviously. You've been running the whole unit for a while, and it was getting awkward with Sergeant Orchid and you being the same rank. Plus, after Lieutenant Hayes, Command and I agree that this unit is too important to deny a new officer the council of a unit sergeant simply because it is small." Looking at the pin, I set the hoof on it and pulled it close. This one I didn't feel was undeserved. Early? Sure. But I had been committing a lot of time to running the unit. Plus, the captain was right, of course. Unit sergeants for sections had the responsibility of molding new lieutenants. At least the ones smart enough to listen. I nodded and said, "Thank you, sir." The captain replied, "I know it is a big and a bit fast, but things are changing rapidly sometimes. Now, as your last task as unit commander, I need 3 names of who should get your old position. Then you and I are going to look this pony over and see if he is house guard material. Understood?" "Understood, sir," I said. The captain left me alone to consider who I thought was ready to join my old job. This was going to be difficult. Radiant Orchid and I sat at lunch eating quietly. I looked across the table at her and said, "Orchid, can I ask you something?" Orchid looked up from her apple salad mid-chew. I took that as a yes. "Do you mind that I've been promoted so far? I wanted to see how you felt about that." She swallowed and softly laughed. "You're sweet to be concerned. Listen, Silent Night, I wanted to be part of Princess Celestia's house guard. I worked really hard to make that happen. You know as well as I do that when you make the choice, promotion opportunities get really slim. Some ponies spend their entire career in the palace guard and never make sergeant. That is even more likely as a house guard." Orchid paused to sip her drink. "I made sergeant. That is a big achievement. I also decided to move to Princess Luna's house guard. That is an even smaller unit. I'm glad I did. I certainly don't begrudge you your success. Who volunteers for extra duty? You. Who knows every regulation and protocol? You. Who looks out for every pony on the team? You. It was always going to be you." She patted me on the hoof. "No, I don't mind. You've earned it." I thought that over and then offered, "But you have more seniority." Orchid laughed at me and said, "I also have a husband and 2 foals I like going home to. The higher you go, the more responsibility you have, and a consequence, the less time you have at home. That is fine for you." She winced. "That isn't what I meant, Silent Night. You'll get there. For now, though, it is fine for you." The comment hadn't really stung, and she had me there. Orchid had a beautiful family. If I had one like hers, I wouldn't want to stay late either. My life was all about the job. I smiled at her and nodded. "Then we're good. That's why I asked at lunch, though. I need 2 names from our squad on who you think could make sergeant." Her head tilted as she asked, "For my squad? For your squad?" I nodded with certainty. Promotion opportunities are slim, and the first sergeant can't seem like he favors one squad over the other. Every pony should have a fair shot. I'm going to pick 2. You're going to pick 2. And I'll give the best 3 to the captain. "Look at you," she teased. "You're going to make an excellent first sergeant for this unit. Just remember us little ponies when you make master sergeant and move up." I snorted at the idea. Ponies do not make master sergeant easily or quickly, and I'd be competing against every pony in both house guards and palace guards. No, this was going to be home for a while. "You realize 2 of these names are from Sergeant Orchid's squad, right?" Shining Armor asked me. "I do, Captain. I considered every pony in the unit." As asked, Sergeant Orchid's advice on who she thought was ready in her squad. I did the same for mine. I took those ponies and ranked them according to seniority, commendation, and their leadership qualities. These were the 3 top ponies, I explained. "And you're not worried your ponies will be upset if we bring some pony over from Orchid's squad?" he asked. "Not at all, sir. We're one unit. Every pony is close-knit and knows the score. First sergeant can't play favorites, and I've got a lot of rookies in my squad. Orchid has more seasoned guards. I took her 2 recommendations and put them with the best I had." Shining Armor nodded and tapped my desk. "Well, you passed the first test. Not that I had any doubt. Now that you have the list, who should get the promotion?" "I gave you the 3 as requested, Captain." "And I'm asking you to recommend one to me now, First Sergeant," he replied. "That puts me in an awkward position. Sure, the best pony for the job, per the metrics and Sergeant Orchid's recommendation, is Iridescence. If I pick her, the others may suspect it because of my feelings." "Is she the best pony for the job?" the captain asked. "Yes, sir. She has the 2nd highest seniority of all first-class ponies and the most commendations. Her interpersonal skills exceed every pony's, mine included, and if it were a regular guard unit, she would have made sergeant before me." "Then make the call, Sergeant," Shining Armor said pointedly. This was clearly the second part of the test. I looked at the documents in front of me once more to be sure. Mountain Stone had the most seniority. He had a full year and then some more than Iridescence. At the same time, Mountain had less than half the commendations she did. Iridescence even had a letter of reference from her commanding officer from her time as a palace guard. Then there was Lightning Flash. He was the best of my squad currently, but he really didn't stack up. From the group of 3, I slid Lightning away and looked back and forth between the 2 remaining. What would the other ponies think? It was my first decision as unit sergeant, and I was going to pick my former special Zum pony. How could I face Iridescence if I sabotaged her career because I was worried the other ponies wouldn't see the facts? The captain just stood there quietly, letting me work it out myself. I slid the piece over to him and said, "Mares rule the world." He nodded in agreement that they do. It so happened that every pony on Princess Luna's house guard did know the score and how to read metrics. If any pony was upset about Iridescence making sergeant, I couldn't tell. The fact that they threw her a small party may have also been a hint. I eyed the group and said, "No pony threw me a party." Iridescence was sitting beside me eating her cake. "Every pony had expected you'd make sergeant," she said between bites. "You want a reward for doing what you're supposed to do?" I snorted and then asked, "And why is Winterspear here? She isn't even part of the unit." That yielded a shove from Iridescence, which isn't strictly regulation, but this was semi-unofficial function, and we weren't in uniform. "I invited her. It's my party. I'll invite who I want. Quit being surly." Fine, I said before taking a huge bite of cake. It was amazing. Crystal Wishes had brought it from Velvet Step's family bakery. Those ponies knew cake. I was in sweets-induced heaven until I saw impending doom. My eyes went wide. It was Miley's turn to play pin the tail on the pony, and she was way off course. Princess Luna had her back to the rapidly approaching Miley. I opened my mouth to shout a warning, but with all the cake I had just a bit into the sudden, it sounded like Fluffy Pink Pony from Ponyville makes. Time slowed down, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. Princess Luna was about to have a second tail. I pointed a hoof, and it was all I could do. Iridescence followed my gaze and gasped. "Cripes, my backside has been pinned!" Princess Luna shouted as she leapt straight into the air. Every pony in the room turned to look in horror. "What happened?" Miley asked before pulling down the blindfold. For such a darkly coated pony, she turned almost white as me. Princess, I'm sorry." Out of the corner of her eye, I saw movement. Every pony else was fawning over Princess Luna, who was taking it in good spirit. Golden magic levitated a slice of cake out the door, and I distinctly saw a sun cutie mark on a wide flank that was beating a hasty retreat. I set up then. The whole pinning had made a diversion. I got up and went to check on the princess. She was a good sport, and we got Miley back on track. Thank goodness our Alicorn rulers have a sense of humor and a lust for cake. Princess Luna and I walked side by side back to her chambers. Mixer and Cog were 2 paces back. As far as strolls through the palace went, this was probably one of the most unnecessarily secure ones. Speaking softly, I asked, "Princess, because the griffins came, you mentioned you were young before you were banished. If I could inquire, are alicorns ever fillies? You were born just like any other pony." "This is not something that we casually speak of, Silent Knight. Many ponies have certain beliefs about us. Princess Celestia feels that certain things should remain behind the curtain, and I agree." That made sense. Some ponies looked at alicorns as living goddesses. "Of course, Princess. My apologies." When we reached the doors, I pulled them open for the princess, and she walked in. "Silent Knight, if thou art off duty, but join me for a moment, please. I would like to speak to you privately." "Yes, Princess," I replied before motioning to Mixer and Cog. "You two take positions outside the door here for now." "Yes, Sergeant," they replied, and I followed the princess in. After pushing the door closed, I made my way over to where Princess Luna had sat down. I took a spot next to her. "Dost thou believe that alicorns are goddesses?" the princess asked me. That was a very philosophical question. Well, logically speaking, alicorns are immortal. They have powerful magic far beyond unicorns that can fly, and they're larger. If they're not goddesses, they're certainly more goddess-like than pony-like. I guess by being so close to you, I don't exactly worship you. At the same time, I know you're not exactly like me." "Ageless," Princess Luna replied. "Pardon?" "We're ageless, not immortal. I won't die of old age, but I can be killed. Thus why thou art here to protect me," the princess corrected. My nose wrinkled and I shivered. The mere idea of the princess being killed creeped me out. "Ageless, then, princess. You're as goddess-like as can be, so I guess I do think of you that way." "Dost thou believe that Celestia and I have always been?" she asked. "I did, but working here for both talk being younger and even full hoods, it's confusing. I know you're both older than well-recorded history." "Indeed," Princess Luna shifted a look over me. "I was once a filly, and we have not always been. Thou will keep that in confidence, wilt thou not?" "You have my word, Princess." The princess nodded firmly and lightly patted me on the hoof. "If thou will excuse me, then, I'd like to take a little rest." "Certainly," I replied, and I got up and left the room quietly, leaving the princess to her thoughts. Well, then, I hope you guys have had a wunderbar day.